Assalamu alaikum everyone, I'm Beenish
And I'm Danish.
and we welcome you to our live Azad Kashmir Community Service and Progress, and we are joined by the amazing Mehreen Sayed. Sayed. Alongside her professional work, Mehreen is actually deeply committed to philanthropy, particularly supporting social development causes in Azad Kashmir, Pakistan. Since 2021, she has helped raise around $200,000 to rebuild 5 schools in Azad Kashmir, serving 1,200 plus students. Partnerships with Comprehensive Disaster Response Services and Ilmo Adab have allowed 2 schools to transition towards co-education, expanding access for girls in rural communities. Her work has been recognized by the Chief Diversity Officer of Facebook and the US Embassy in Islamabad, which named her a change maker. She has also been featured in Voice of America and Gulf News. Mehreen has earned a Master's of Public Administration, Public and Nonprofit Management and Policy with a Finance Specialization from NYU Wagner, and she's one of our 2026 awardees for Social Impact and Change from Women to Women Forum. So, welcome Mehreen.
Thank you so much guys for having me. Thank you to Women and both of you. Nice to see you.
Nice to meet you. Nice to see you as well. So Mehreen, let's start with your journey. What first drew you towards community service and social impact, and when did you realize that this was something you wanted to pursue other than your professional life?
Well, growing up in Azad Kashmir, we saw a lot of people who were not as privileged as us, and today happens to be my late mother's birthday, and I always saw her helping people without looking for any recognition. And can I give you a little story?
Yes.
Once we were getting ready to go to school, we were in Azad Kashmir, and I remember my dad's car and driver, they used to come pick us up sometimes, and it's winter. And we're getting ready to get into the car, and we see a little boy. He was maybe a little bit older than me, my older sister's age, like 2 years older than me, and he was selling balloons. And he was shivering, and he had just a kurta, like shalwar kameez, just a kurta on, and we're in our uniforms with our sweaters and blazers, and we're getting in the car, and this little boy, he's trying to sell us balloons, and he can't go to school. My mother says, "Beta ruko," and my mom was a teacher too, like she was used to go to school with us. She said, "2 minutes." Like she goes inside, brings out, a couple of minutes later, she brings out a couple of sweaters, and my older sister's sweaters, and she puts a sweater on that little boy, and he's still shivering, and then she puts another sweater on him to layer him up, and then he started feeling better, and then he went on his way trying to sell balloons, and that was his life. He did not have access to education, and those kind of things, when you see them growing up, they kind of stick in your head. And like my mother's act of just helping him and then moving on with her life, and just it's just that when in 2020, I was traveling to Azad Kashmir because I like to travel a lot and I like to go to Pakistan a lot. And right before COVID, there was an avalanche that had happened in Neelam Valley where I think over 100 people had died, their houses were destroyed. So I figured I'm going there, so why not bring some extra cash and a bunch of friends and my dad and my mom, and put together some money. And then I went to Muzaffarabad, visited a shelter home. When I went there, the people were being treated. They were being taken to the military hospital for treatment, and they were bringing them back to the house, and there were multiple families living in one 4 or 5 bedroom house. When I got there, people told me, the locals, that you think this is bad? There's families and communities whose houses and schools and hospitals and clinics were destroyed in the 2005 earthquake that have still not been rebuilt. That's when I was like, oh my God, it's no longer in the headlines. At that time, 15 years had passed. Now we're in 2026. In 2 months, it's going to be 21 years since that massive earthquake. And there's still hundreds, maybe over 1,000 even, schools that have not been rebuilt.
Wow.
So yeah, I figured why not do one little thing at a time.
With that said though, very few people, and I like that you began this with the story about your mother, which shows not just philanthropy. Philanthropy, I feel gives it too much of a formal title, but that compassion, it exists beyond just you. That you saw that growing up, that having compassion for those that are less fortunate shaped you in that. You heard that, sir. Many of us, I think, might go to Pakistan. In fact, many of us, when we do go to Pakistan, we see many children and even grown-ups, with lacking basic necessities, walking barefoot on I often go to Lahore, so I'll see them walking that heat on the ground, and then and it definitely saddens me. But I think very few people would hear that story about 15 years having no access to proper infrastructure and feel that no, I want to help in this.
Yeah, and I think to your point, we don't have to be like philanthropy sounds like fancy, but this is, as humans, I think each one of us as an individual, I'm an ordinary person, we're all just normal people living our lives. We can each do something little where we feel passionate about, where we feel a connection, and where we feel that we can actually create an impact. We don't have to be on fancy boards of
So, it's funny because this goes back to our conversation. So I remember when you were being notified of your, getting your award, you were very much like, well, what did I do? And you saw these, like a lot of our awardees, did some really great awardees this year. Yeah. And you were like, what did I do? But I'm like, not to even like compare, but it's something to think about that like a lot of people pursue it full time and it becomes their career. And that's something we should always cherish. And we're very happy. But then there are people like us who are professionals in corporate careers, and we don't have an opportunity, the time that these full-time people are doing. But we could still, give in our share. And a lot of the share, going back to your point about philanthropy, I feel like there's that title or that ego that kind of comes in our community where it's about that community recognition, and about obtaining that like status, and it's always like. It's very ego driven, and it's so. But the fact that like you've done so much, I mean, you had this whole list, and you were like, "Are you sure I'm a worthy award?" Really showed your humbleness, and it goes back to your amazing mother, who was a big community person, someone who was actually in the first host committee for Women to Women Forum, so she always played a huge role, and she's done so much for the community that anyone and everyone speaks praises of her. So, continuing in that, mindset. One thing that did stand out to me was you were saying that, you were in Azad Kashmir. So, I kind of already know, but, I'd love for people to know that, you spent a good part of your life in Pakistan before your family ended up coming to the U.S. So I'd like to, hear about that experience.
Yeah, I mean, my family, basically, my father's side is from Azad Kashmir, and that's where I spent my childhood. If you want to talk about my dada, my father's father, my grandfather, he graduated from college in 1938 in Jammu and Srinagar area.
Wow.
And that he was part of the excise and taxation department of the larger state of Azad Kashmir. And then when Pakistan gained independence, after that Azad Kashmir gained independence, he joined the Department of Education of the Azad Kashmir local government. And he was the deputy collector, I believe, if I remember correctly. From like my father had told me, my dada was he was in the Azad Kashmir state government, civil service, and then after 1947, 1948, when Azad Kashmir also became independent, part of Pakistan, he joined the Department of Education and he became a headmaster at the local. In our village and this local high school, and so I guess like my dada was part of this before.
Also a leader.
Well, I'm seeing a trend, education,
exactly.
your dada, your mother, education, and you building schools, three generations.
Three generations. So I mean, just going off of that point, what how do you define service and leadership, and specifically? Meaningful service. What does it mean to you? And we talked about, just to your point also, that 1.5 गज की मस्जिद, जैसे वो दानिश कह रहा था कि 1.5 गज के, I think गज नहीं होता canal. I'm sorry, my measurements are completely off. I'm not aware of like the actual standards. But with that said, like for a lot of people, when they think of service, and unfortunately we do live in a society, as Danish said, that where they want to be kind of lauded for even the so-called humanitarian work, which honestly speaking should be innate in all of us. But you come from a long line of individuals that did it without that,
those titles,
without those titles, without that notoriety. So what does meaningful service mean to you specifically, and how do you define it, and leadership specifically?
I think it just comes down to our faith, right? Like at the end of the day, we're all individuals, and if we remember that, no matter how famous you can get, one day it all is going to end, right? So it's more about makes you feel like, okay, you created an impact for someone's life, and that in itself is your reward. Seeing a child who didn't have a sweater in winter and putting a sweater on that child. You know, maybe he remembers it, maybe he doesn't. But maybe he also found someone else who helped him to go to school. We couldn't do that. And, you know, going to your earlier point about, like, yeah, I think having organizations is a good thing. And when, you know, when Women to Women approached me about giving me an award, and I was really like, well, there's so many amazing people doing amazing things. Like, I just take on a project, an individual project with different, like, existing organizations, and I like to play a supporting role. I don't need to make my own organization to create an impact, because why recreate the wheel? There's so many amazing organizations that exist. Why not just support the work that they're doing?
Thank you. Yeah, that's a great.
Yeah.
Wait, go on.
Yeah, and then just like move on. And sometimes it gets exhausting. And honestly, having a full-time job, like all of us work full-time, sometimes you do also need a break to recharge. Mm-hmm. And if you have this, if you're running an organization of your own, like, you know, I really admire the people who do that. But those of us who have other work and other things going on, and we want to do it from project to project, in that also you create, like, for example, with me, since I went to 2020 and realized that there's schools since the October 2005 earthquake that have not been built, I created fundraisers on Facebook and Instagram and did 5 different fundraisers in the past 6 years, one school at a time, on average maybe one school at a time. Last year I didn't do one because we'll go into that later. But you know, the thing is, nobody can do these things alone. And if I'm to just say that, oh, I'm some sort of a community leader, no. I just create this link, this page, and it's like my friends and my family, my father, my mother was alive, like my cousins, like a lot of my friends. Mm. People chime in to help, and you know, it just means a lot when people have that kind of trust in you, when you do it based off of word of mouth, having grown up in New Jersey, and you know, my parents have lived here, and you know, we have like family friends and like people, and then you know, your friends see and they contribute. It's sort of like, I think those things are like more impactful, because you build a school, you see how many students are there, like between the 4 schools that have been built, the 5th school for which I did a fundraiser this year, construction will start later this year. But so far, out of those 4 schools in Azad, Kashmir, there are over like 1,000, maybe 1,200. And the population of students fluctuates, because in the mountain regions, people do migrate from season to season. So especially like when the more uphill areas. So it's like, I don't meet them. And I find those teachers and the students and their parents in tears. Because they're like, you know, we feel that the world forgot about us, and then someone remembered us. Mm. So
I agree. And you know, going back to your fundraiser, you know, we have our own fundraiser with Women to Women, and you know,
it was amazing. By the way,
seeing the community come help us, because the community for us has also played a huge role in, you know, making sure things work out properly. And in that whole thing, it's the most heartwarming feeling to have the community, you know, chip in, you know, to create this dream that was originally started by our president, Mr. Sohail, and it kind of just became our own thing, because you know, we even came in to do all this through different, like, you know, I came in for different reasons, you know, you came in for different reasons, and then Shelter Home came after you joined as well, right? Because it came well after I joined.
Story House happened afterwards.
By the way, the stories coming out of your shelter home that you guys run, like, fascinating. Because you think women in developing countries are the ones who always just need help, but there's so many women in New Jersey that you guys are helping.
Yeah, and it's like women in America, like to think that there's women in America who are going through the same kind of problems, financial, emotional, physical, that one would expect, you know, a village in South Asia. Yeah. And they're going through that here is like, I think people find it very hard to believe. They're like, really, in America? Yeah. And so just that factor alone. And yes.
Oh no. It was perfectly great. And you know, in that story you were telling, you know, collaboration. Yeah. You know, we are always looking for help. you know, we're always begging for people to help us, because it's a huge project. Our president undertook it on her own, and then we all supported it And even then, like, every little bit of help goes a long way. So that idea of collaboration just goes in such a long way. And it really just makes everything so impactful as well.
So, you've answered a lot of these questions that I had planned to ask you in your description of community service and leadership. But one thing I definitely want to ask, because again, going back to the point that people want to be lauded, how do you stay passionate in this pursuit when you're not only not recognized, but
and not get burned out.
and not get burned out? Like, not only are you not recognized, there's no monetary, obviously there's no monetary gain, and there's no emotion, like any award or trophy or whatever. And as you said, we were one of the first to you actually had more important people recognize you, but it's not happening frequently. How do you stay? Because I know for a lot of people, when they do join a cause such as this, that passion sometimes tapers off.
Yeah.
Because it is a very it
takes a lot of energy.
It takes a lot of energy, and maybe you're not getting the I don't want to say gratitude, but maybe you're not the support. So how do you stay passionate?
So here's the thing, one of somebody who's like an older brother, every time I felt this way, I'm like, the fundraiser's not moving along. It's like, so when I create these fundraisers on Facebook or Instagram, the maximum timeline is 3 months. And you cannot, like, if you don't meet your target, like the fundraiser is over. So alhamdulillah, so far, I keep modest targets. The first school that we built was, we raised $28,000. Second school was a smaller school, raised $25,000. Third and fourth schools, we raised $50,000 each. And there were times where, you started in Ramzan, people are in the giving spirit, but then it kind of slows down. And then I've talked to friends like, oh my God, I'm not gonna meet the target. And one of my friends was like an older brother. He said, Mehreen, you started this. Allah Ta'ala is gonna help you finish it.
Mashallah.
That's how we feel.
Yeah.
So
Allah Ta'ala wants, you're just like a wasila in Urdu. They say like wasila, like Allah Ta'ala ka kaam hai, wo khud karwaega. And then you just kind of like remind your friends who made pledges, and then there's some of my friends, because I keep saying like people who have helped me because I couldn't do it alone, right? Some of my friends, they're like, come on, let's push this, because they're like more eager.
Invested.
Yeah, they're more invested, and they're more eager to help me finish the target because they also see the progress. Because then I go and visit those teachers and those students in their schools. And can I tell you another thing? When I get tired, it does get exhausting to raise funds, but then you get a break after the fundraiser is done, then the construction starts. And then eventually, like a few months later, when those students come to school and I go visit them, do you know there are students in those like Neelam Valley, Jhelum Valley areas of Azad Kashmir? There are students who walk not just an hour each way, not just 2 hours each way. There's one boy in the last school I visited. I wanted to say, I went to like all the classrooms and I was asking, "Kya aapko kitni der lagti hai school aane mein?" This one boy in one of the classrooms, the teacher pointed, he's like, it takes him 3 hours to walk each way. He starts at like sunrise, Fajr time, and mind you, in those mountains in Azad Kashmir, they're very, not just the terrain that's difficult, it's also like, there's a lot of like, I know, I'm from Azad Kashmir, there are like snakes and stuff. And it's dangerous for those kids to walk because a lot of those villages are so far out. It's hard for, whenever the schools that we've built, we have to leave our car on a main road and then walk 20-30 minutes to get to the school. And those children, most of them, they don't have cars. And even if they do, the cars can't reach their villages to transport them. So they walk. So those children are the ones who keep me going when I get tired.
That's so amazing. And there was a lot about the operations that really stood out when you were telling us in our discussion.
Yeah.
I would love for you to share, what makes these schools so great, that they're not just, educating, but they're also creating jobs for the community.
Yeah, so in terms of like operations, I just want to like clarify one thing, that these are not, the communities that we're serving, they are underprivileged. Because if they were privileged, they would be able to put their children in private schools. When the earthquake happened, it stayed in the news, in the headline news for weeks upon weeks, but then, people moved on with their lives. A lot of people from different parts of the world, all over the world, helped donate, and a lot of nonprofits and a lot of people from within Pakistan also donated toward like the people of Azad Kashmir. But after a couple of years, things slowed down for whatever. People can just do an online search to see what happened with all the funds that came in for earthquake affectees, because there were enough funds that the international community donated. They were donated to the government state of Pakistan, and you guys can just do a search to see where the hiccups were. Not going into the details, but nonetheless, 26 years later, what we do now is that there are a couple of nonprofit organizations that are registered at 501c3. They're able to do fundraisings in the US, UK, and so for example, when I create a fundraiser, people make the donation directly to the 501c3, and every single donor gets a tax deductible receipt in their email. And once those funds are transferred after a couple of months to the nonprofit's account in Pakistan or Azad Kashmir, that nonprofit hires a local contractor to build the school. So the first organization I partnered with is Comprehensive Disaster Response Services. Tache is the founder, and I think you guys have met him, CDRS. And after that, they've done some amazing work all over Pakistan and schools also in Azad Kashmir. Then Adab started reaching out to me because they focus explicitly on schools. So I partnered with them on 2 additional schools, and now it would be my third, the fundraiser that I've done. So both of these organizations have done amazing work. What they do is when they have the funds, first of all, before I even do the fund, I'm going to backtrack a little bit. Before I even raise the funds, these organizations are in touch with the local Azad Kashmir Department of Education, and they have lists of schools that need a building and furniture. Students are showing up to these schools in Azad Kashmir, like they have a curriculum, they have their books, they have teachers, and the teacher's salary is paid by the local Azad Kashmir Department of Education. They have their schools operating, but when you get to school, they just don't have a building.
Right.
So they have to take lessons outdoors under the open sky. When it rains, classes are canceled. And so those organizations have the list of schools, and they're like, okay, we can't obviously do everything, so they pick 1 or 2 or 3 schools at a time, and that's how whoever's interested in doing a fundraiser for a school, they share that list. And so once I have, okay, they identify there's a school in Jhelum Valley or Neelam Valley or Lipa Valley that needs to be built, and this is how many students they have, and we do the fundraiser. Everybody, like my friends, you guys, everybody chips in, and then the organization hires a local contractor. Adab has a contractor based out of Muzaffarabad, they're local Kashmiri, and that contractor also does these schools at a discounted rate as their contribution, because they know how much these communities are struggling. Once these schools also, they're seismically like sort of like, is that the right word? Like they're like sort of earthquake resilient. And once they build the building, we have furniture. We provide the furniture, the building, washrooms. There's a computer lab, a science lab, and like a small little library with some books. Because part of the curriculum, like those kids in, I think at the high school level, they are required to have a science lab and a computer lab. So we also provide desktops, computers. And once the school is built, the schools are handed over to the local state of Azad Kashmir, and they operate the schools and pay the teachers' salaries. And there are communities where if they have a good student to teacher ratio, and teachers in Azad Kashmir for public schools are better qualified than a lot of private school teachers in Pakistan. Their teachers' training is excellent, and I meet them every time I go. So that's the operations side of, and I think you were saying something else that you asked aside from the operations.
Well, basically, the fact that it's run by the own communities. It's not
absolutely. I missed a key point here. The land that these schools, every single school that these organizations build, the land is donated by the community members. So that's another thing I want to sort of point out, and thank you for reminding me that people in Azad Kashmir, while they're struggling and they're trying to do the best with what they have, they're not beggars. They have a lot of dignity. They pay their taxes. but they don't have representation in the National Assembly in Islamabad. So there's this misconception, even sadly among some Pakistanis, that, oh, people in Azad Kashmir, they're freeloaders. No, they're not. They pay their taxes. But that has not translated into providing those services that they deserve, that they are entitled to. It's their right. And those people, they have a lot of dignity. They provide the land. Whether it's a couple of community members, they get together and they give parts of their lands, where they build a school, or if it's like one or two people who donate their land. And once they figure out the land, they prepare it. They put in their own resources to prepare the land, and whichever community is ready, that's when the Department of Education points out to the organization, the nonprofit, that okay, this community is ready, their land is ready and prepared, now you guys can build a school. So this is basically how it's basically a public-private partnership. And another thing, Ilmu Adab is, they're very keen on this. They're like, whenever you build a school, we want to make sure that we name it after you or your parents. I'm like, okay, I don't want anything named after me because this isn't about me. But they insist, so they're like, name it after one of your grandparents who has deceased, or like your mother, right? The reason for that is because all the funds that came in from the international community, they went into this agency called Earthquake Reconstruction and Rehabilitation Authority. In the first couple of years, they did some good work, but then you guys can see when some governments changed and things slowed down, the funds were, what happens now is that when these nonprofits build these schools using private donors' money, there are local politicians who try to take credit. And this is what these organizations are trying to protect the communities from, because it's like keeping more transparency.
Right.
Like Ilmu Adab or CDRS built this school, and the reason one of your deceased grandparents' name, and just sort of to inform the community that it's some donors sitting in the US who contributed to this, not your local politician who may be taking credit, who didn't do the actual work. So.
And one of the schools is named after your mother, right?
Yeah, so this is another thing. Like when I started the fundraiser, so my mom passed away in Ramzan of 2024, 2.5 years ago at this point. And she used to actively donate to these schools, and also she used to ask her friends to chip in. And then when she passed away, the fundraiser that I did after she passed away, I literally had started it because she passed away in Ramzan. It was the first week of Ramzan. I started the fundraiser, and the next morning my mom died. So it wasn't me, it was a few friends. They're like, Mary, next school you should name after your mother. I said, no, that's really selfish, because I'm not the only one who donates to each school. Like, I chip in, and my friends chip in, my cousins chip in, my father chips in, like you guys, and your friends have donated. So it seems cheap if I put it under my mom's name. So then several of my friends, they're like, your mom recently passed away, and people knew my mom, and they're like, you should really name it after your mother. So I was like, okay. And Ilmu Adab wanted to, just because, again, for that reason. They don't want, it's not to sort of give publicity or just
to
turn
protect
some around.
themselves in a way.
It's to protect, yeah, exactly.
Well, I think even especially because it is very necessary, to your earlier point, that the people of Azad Kashmir are paying taxes.
Yes.
They're very self-sufficient and self-reliant, and when unfortunately, due to whatever reasons that we won't get into, you can Google, as Nadine said, you can certainly Google that yourself. And we live in an age where everything is available at the tip of your fingers. For whatever reason, those taxation dollars are not converting into the schools and other infrastructure necessities. There needs to be, for lack of a better word, accountability.
Yeah.
And when these schools are being built, then and if somebody else takes credit, then that accountability gets lost in that shuffle.
Yeah.
So it's very necessary for that reason, especially, to make it clear that yes, there's a school that has been built, or there's people that are being helped, but unfortunately, it is not through the means that it should be.
Yeah.
So, and that's necessary. I mean, just for accountability's sake.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
also the local Azad Kashmir Department of Education, they are doing their job.
Exactly.
They're actually they are actually doing their job, and in that regard, there's much less corruption in Azad Kashmir locally than the rest of Pakistan. The literacy rate of Azad Kashmir is over 77 or maybe 78%.
Yeah, we were talking about this the other day.
Yeah.
So this is one of the things that I think we don't realize. Not only the literacy, there are very highly qualified individuals in Azad Kashmir, specifically if you compare it to the rest of the country. And I'm not saying that because two Kashmiris and Danish. So
Kashmiri here.
yeah, and here and.
Adopted
आपको
Kashmiri?
आप फिर भी बहुत amazing हो.
Alright.
But the point is it is a thing, and so that's one of the reasons why these schools are necessary.
Yeah.
Even though there's these earthquakes, and even though there's just a lack of basic infrastructure, and there's money that is lost in the shuffle, still the people are trying to establish themselves, and there's so. Subhanallah, there's so many people that are from overseas, United States and the UK, that want to see Azad Kashmir prosper. So, without getting into the politics of it,
But I will say, we can't also at the same time take credit away from what the state of Pakistan has done for Azad Kashmir. It's just that, it's not without its flaws, but they have. It could be better, though. And, I will say that it's not just schools. So, the literacy rate is 77-78%, but you know what the school enrollment rate is? It's 98% for boys and over 90% for girls in Azad Kashmir.
Mashallah.
The enrollment rate.
Right.
So why is it that more than 90% girls and boys enroll in schools, but the literacy rate drops down to 77%? That's again, it's because of lack of infrastructure. Now imagine if we are little kids, we are in the same village, and we have a school that we have to walk 2 hours each way. We have to either hike down our mountain or hike up to get to our school. Because this is all mountains, Neelam Valley, Jhelum Valley, that's where we're building these schools. We're like 5, 6, 7 years old, 8 years old, 10 years old, and girls have other problems, like girls get their period, right? They go to school, but they don't have a building. They have a teacher, they have their books, they have their school bag, they get to school, they can't use the bathroom. One teacher, we built one of the primary schools that we built. This one teacher actually started crying. She said, you have no idea how much duas, all the parents are giving to you and your friends and everybody who donated. Because she said that she teaches little kids. And she said because they didn't have a boundary wall, they don't have a classroom. So little kids, not only in rain, but people also have livestock. There's stray dogs. Sometimes if there's let's say if there's a cow or a dog that comes nearby, little kids get scared. And she said, I've seen so many of my students who are little, they start crying and they run away when they see a dog or a cow coming by. So that, and also that's why the enrollment rate is high, but it drops down. What we have seen with these schools, when we do build the schools, with each school, before we have built the infrastructure, the first school in Premkot village, the active student participation was around 250 girls, if I remember correctly, and this is a girls' high school in Premkot. The day I got there for the inauguration, there were so many girls there, and I said, well, it seems like more than 250 girls. They're when they heard that there's a new school that's been built, more than 50 girls who had dropped out came back and re-enrolled in school.
Wow.
So having this infrastructure, just giving them a facility, children are re-enrolling back into school. And also, I will say, the men in Azad Kashmir are very progressive. Whenever I have gone, and you talk to people okay, what other difficulties are people they're if our women can have a hospital where they don't have to travel hours just to have their delivery, pregnant women in those mountains and villages, a lot of them die because they don't have clinics or hospitals readily available. They have to drive on these unpaved bumpy roads for hours to get to if not Muzaffarabad, I don't know how many hospitals they can, how many people they can facilitate. A lot of them go to Rawalpindi in Pakistan. So those men, they don't ask for anything for themselves. They always speak for their women. They're our women in our family, they need gynecological care locally, but they don't have it. And also water is an issue. Sorry, my stomach's growling.
Okay.
And water is an issue because in those villages, let's say there's Jhelum River, Neelam River, and there's like high mountains where people's houses are on these like high altitude mountains. Like they literally have to go walk down, get water, walk up hours just to have a container of water. And I've seen it with my own eyes, like literally people walking with waters, like they have these rods that they place on their shoulders and they walk up the hills just to bring water. So there's water infrastructure that's needed, basic healthcare facilities that are needed. And I think over 400, 500 clinics and healthcare facilities and hospitals were also destroyed in that earthquake and not rebuilt. So it's not just schools, it's everything that people in their neighborhoods need.
And this is all your first hand. These aren't statistics you're reading online.
Yeah.
You're hearing from the people.
Yeah, I go and meet those people.
And she sees
exactly,
it too,
yeah.
exactly.
We want to give that, she's not just reading an article and like we would be.
Exactly. So, what do you think at this point is the most pressing issue without touching base on what's going on? Like, what's the most pressing issue? Azad, but the most pressing issue that facing communities are facing in Azad Kashmir that deserves the greatest of attentions.
I think let's talk a little bit about what's happening right now, because I've been trying to reach my cousins who live in Azad Kashmir on WhatsApp and Instagram chat. They're not receiving my messages. Sometimes I am able to talk to some other friends, people I've gotten to know through my visits, or my other cousins who are going in and out of Azad Kashmir. If let's say they go to Azad Kashmir for 5 days, come back out in Rawalpindi, they have Wi-Fi, but there's internet, internet is shut down, and people are able to like get basic foods like in their local shops, like milk and eggs and stuff, but in like one of my cousins was saying that it's the poor people who are laborers or daily wage workers who live out, and also like not just poor people, but like people who live in far out villages. They're having a very difficult time, getting some facilities, and if you look at what these people are demanding, people in Azad Kashmir, I'm actually blown away by the fact that they didn't start protesting years before. Because I've been going regularly. I grew up in Azad Kashmir, but I've been going for these schools, and since 2020 that I've been going every year. I used to think, I'm like, I don't want to make this political, but why aren't people more angry about not having hospitals, about not having schools, or asking for cheaper electricity? Azad Kashmir produces electricity, but there's power outages. They shouldn't have to deal with power outages. It's a state that produces electricity. This shouldn't be a crime to ask for this. And I think the government had accepted most of their demands, and then all of a sudden, something happened, and I just think that
and to your point, as in every society and almost every country, when things go awry, it's not you and I, alhamdulillah, we're very blessed in the places that we have respectively been born in and been raised in the kind of families that we belong to. But it's not those people that are facing these issues. It's the ones that can't stand to face those issues. The ones that are already at a lack of basic necessities for living.
Exactly.
And you have nothing to lose.
And yes.
Make it a fight.
And then that's why, and oftentimes that is why they fight, because they have nothing to lose. They've already living in lack, for a lack of a better word. If you could change one narrative, let's say current narrative, because since we're talking about the current stuff, one current narrative that you could change about Azad Kashmir, what would it be?
I think this comes back to what we were just kind of touching on. I think so. The overall population of Pakistan is maybe 240, 250 million right now, maybe 250 million. The population of Azad Kashmir is less than 5 million. And I don't know who's good at math. It's maybe like less than what percent?
Wait, how much was it?
So Pakistan's overall population is 250 million.
Okay.
And Azad Kashmir's population is less than 5 million.
So that's like 50 times 5. So
maybe like less than 1%.
Yeah.
Right.
1 over 10. So
Yeah.
less than 10%.
Probably less than 1%.
Yeah.
Okay, we're so bad at math. But
Yeah.
anyway.
I'm thinking the next question. That's why.
Less than 5 million people in Azad Kashmir, right? And like we touched on earlier, people of Azad Kashmir, they do the math.
Yes, I'll do it.
People of Azad Kashmir, they do pay their taxes. And it's for a lot of Pakistanis, sadly, we're like watching his calculator, but a lot of Pakistanis,
Wow.
I've seen this.
I was so off. 2%.
I thought it was
Oh,
like 1%.
2%.
I should have done this homework
There you
before.
go.
But yeah. So like less than 2% of Pakistan's population, right? It's a very, very small population. And a population that pays their taxes. A population that educates their girls. You don't need to convince them to educate their girls. They're begging us to build schools for their girls.
And
So
finding resources themselves, too.
yeah, exactly. So the narrative that I see like Twitter or X, like there are some very negative comments made from not all, most Pakistanis support the people of Azad Kashmir. And I saw the generosity when the earthquake happened and when the floods in 2010 happened. Pakistanis are the biggest supporters of people of Azad Kashmir.
Right.
But there are always those people who make these comments about, oh, Kashmiri apni auqat se zyada mang rahe hain. Like I've literally seen this on a prominent page on Twitter. Someone who belongs to a particular maybe political party, ye Kashmiri apni auqat se zyada mang rahe hain. And literally, like, you know, Kashmiris pay their taxes. They educate their kids. They live in a very difficult terrain.
I think this is
Exactly.
that statement itself.
So-
There's also like whether you're Kashmiri, Punjabi, from Karachi, anything that any race that you may belong to, Hyderabadi, whatever. I'm sorry, please, I don't know all the provinces, but wherever you come from, I don't think there's such an auqat. I think every Pakistani deserves, every person living in not only Pakistan, whether it be India, whether it be United States for that matter.
Yeah.
That's what Women to Women is trying to do, right?
Right.
So
they're-
needs met for
It's
all.
people's rights to have, so that's like basically the narrative. Like I think because Kashmir has this other like special status, which, you know, there's this whole like larger Kashmir issue that is, you know, conflict between India and Pakistan, and it's also actually like the issue of Kashmiri people's right to self-determination. Because that issue in the UN Security Council has not been resolved, we have this special status where we're not treated as a province, where we could have a representation in Islamabad in Pakistan's National Assembly. Azad Kashmir has a legislative assembly, and that's where the term Azad is coined. Like it's the Azad, independently elected government of the state of Kashmir. So this is where also this is another point of contention, which of course we're not going to go into that. Like where there are people sitting in Pakistan, different cities in Pakistan, in Faisalabad, Sialkot, Rawalpindi, you know, making decisions on how people in Azad Kashmir should be living their lives, and those people have their perks and privileges. And this, I think, this narrative, which I think we should all be like very thankful to the people living in Azad Kashmir who are protesting, that they're bringing this narrative out into the limelight that most people were not aware of. Because when we talk about Kashmir, it's like internationally, oh, the Kashmir conflict between India and Pakistan. And people forget that there's a small population of 4.5 million to 5 million people on this side of the line of control, which we are not living under occupation, but we have our socioeconomic challenges where people could, and you know, Azad Kashmir's literacy rate is not just higher than the rest of Pakistan, it's also higher than the Indian occupied Kashmir. So there's a lot of potential in these people. And the men in these Kashmiri communities in Azad Kashmir, they are very proactive when it comes to supporting women. And it's just, you know, there's so many women protesting too. So I think maybe we can move away from protests.
Okay, excellent. So one narrative would just to kind of, to your point, to summarize your narrative would be that they have a right to protest, maybe that narrative?
Everyone has a right to
Everyone has
protest,
a right to
peaceful protest.
Peaceful protest.
And I think the state of Pakistan, there's so many issues in Pakistan. There's so many people always protesting. But, you should learn by now. You should learn how to manage these protests peacefully. You can't always blame innocent people and say, oh, well, there were some elements that, well, if you know that there's some elements that are dangerous, then you should be able to tackle that. You shouldn't have to use force on innocent people.
I think that can even relate to, the state of U.S. and U.S. as well, or any country, and I think a lot of times there's this kind of narrative that we are like not patriotic because we're speaking out, which is completely gaslighting.
Yeah.
If I'm proud of, I was born and raised in the U.S., but I am proud of my Pakistani heritage. Yeah. And, my, heritage also falls very much in India and other countries as well. It goes, the last of it carries on, but that doesn't mean that speaking out against what goes wrong is against it. And likewise, in the U.S. as well. So a lot of times people who are protesting are not trying to make problems. And I think that's a big kind of misconception of protesting.
I think that there's no greater sign of patriotism than to want to see your country in the best possible state. I think if anything, this is the biggest sign of patriotism. I think it's not only is it gaslighting, it's delusional to think that anybody who wants to see a better country or a better place of living is somehow unpatriotic. I think,
and I will say, people of Azad Kashmir are among the most patriotic Pakistanis. Mm-hmm. You know how many, how many Azad Kashmiris are in Pakistan Army and in the ISI? Mm-hmm. Like, people are patriotic because people who live along the line of control, they have seen what a danger an actual military occupation from like an enemy could be. And so people of Azad Kashmir have sacrificed their lives not just for themselves but also for Pakistan, because Azad Kashmiris are the first ones who are like hit, last year when this India-Pakistan 3-4 day war happened in May 2025, I went and visited a school. I was actually on my way and got stuck in the UAE for 3 days because the war was happening and the flights were cancelled. So I went to Lahore, and then a couple of days later I went to Azad Kashmir. I went to when you cross Kohala Bridge area and then you pass Muzaffarabad city, you go on to Neelam Road, and when you hit Neelam Road, you are driving in parallel to the line of control, where like on the other side of the river, you can actually see some Indian military posts. And Ilmo Adab organization, they had built this school that I was visiting in Jhelum Valley, Machiara, but then also I wanted to revisit the Vaiya school, which is where we had to go along the line of control. This is a school I visited twice. This was like a week before my mom died 2 years ago that I visited. And then because at that time, when I went in the first week of March, it was covered with snow. They wanted me to come back and see how beautiful it is and actually so I went back to that school, and I heard that some of the schools were also damaged from the Indian soldiers shooting toward villages. Alhamdulillah, none of our students were killed, but their school buildings were damaged. So it's not just natural disasters that people in Azad Kashmir and these mountainous regions have to deal with. It's also that larger threat. And, so I just hope that something positive comes out of these protests. And I hope that people, have their basic, build some hospitals there, build some clinics, and take away these, like, in Pakistan they call it load shedding, power outages. Give people their basic necessities, and they won't feel the need to go out in the streets to protest. And nobody wants to break away from Pakistan. Everybody that I know in Azad Kashmir considers themselves Pakistani. Right. So I don't think the state should feel so threatened by these people.
Indeed. So what role do you think women and young people specifically can play in the shaping of progress in Azad Kashmir?
I think you should go visit Azad Kashmir. It's a beautiful, beautiful region, and it's very safe. Can I also say Azad Kashmir is like the safest part of Pakistan? I mean, I've been to Gilgit-Baltistan, and that's the ultimate safest part of Pakistan. Azad Kashmir, like one of the safest places in Pakistan. It's, you see like all the beautiful scenery, and you meet all these hospitable people, and I will say there's a lot of guest houses. If you want to go for tourism, just, there's a lot of guest houses that are being built very close to the river. May not be the safest, but, go there. There are like plenty of options to choose from. I think young people should go visit Azad Kashmir, help boost their tourism economy, and meet the people, so you can also see that they're normal people just like any other Pakistani. They just want to be able to have an easier life for their elderly and for their children and for their and have a better economy. People don't want to necessarily leave their villages and go abroad to work. There are people who want to stay there. People in Azad Kashmir are far more accomplished than us, probably. They don't want to leave their villages. Not everybody wants to leave. There's a lot of Azad Kashmiri diaspora, especially in the UK. I think people can also invest, not just like send remittances where like you're just feeding your family, like invest, like build industry there. Like help with the economic development. There's so much that can be done, and there's so many. I think young people should feel absolutely safe going there. I go there alone, and
that is true though. In general, in Pakistan, I think in the past 10 years, tourism has gone up significantly because there are more infrastructures in those more remote, very beautiful areas. Beyond the big cities like Karachi.
Also, I will say people but I just have to. People who sometimes I've seen in Gilgit-Baltistan and also in Azad Kashmir, people who go from bigger cities in Pakistan, they don't pick up their trash. The local communities are very, they take care of they're very clean.
Have you seen the U.S. community?
I mean, but in those communities, in those villages, people really value the earth. Land. Yeah, the land, the earth, and,
people understand Kashmir's level of beauty is such where that's why there's so much conflict, because it's the beauty of the land.
Also the water. The conflict's
the
water.
The water is mostly about water.
That adds to the beauty too.
That adds to the beauty, and for our to bring our Bollywood fans, a lot of the reasons why they shoot in Europe is because Kashmir is that beautiful, and they realize, but due to safety concerns, they went. So that's the.
Well, Azad Kashmir is safe, but Bollywood's just not allowed to shoot there.
Yes. Well, that's another.
Sorry.
That's another. That was more of a trying to people to understand why Kashmir is so great. Trying to increase the tourism.
They have shot some really good Pakistani dramas in Azad Kashmir.
Oh yes.
Watching,
yeah.
So
we have a lot of fans who are watching us, so we have to entertain them as well.
Inshallah. So for Kashmiris living abroad who want to contribute, may not know where to start, and for young Kashmiris in particular, what do you say to them and how to make a difference and where to donate and where to go specifically, and if they feel like they really can't change much because of the lack of connect? What would you recommend if they want to donate or get involved in?
I think so. The fundraisers that I do, I usually just do once a year, and I don't have an active fundraiser right now, but you can go on Ilmuadab's website, and you can also go on CDRS World. It's cdrsworld.com, I think, and ilmuadab.com. Both of these organizations are legally registered in the US as 501c3 charities. You can go on their websites and you can either make a monetary donation, but you can also volunteer. Actually being physically involved, and go visit. It's very safe, and both of these organizations have amazing people that are associated with them. And one thing about Ilmuadab is that their overhead cost is very, very low. It's a couple of families that put this organization together, so whenever they're low on funds, they fill the gap with from their own pockets. They, I think, have one staff who's like a project manager who deals with the contractors and stuff. So they're very minimal in their overhead spending. So in CDRS, everyone knows Todd Shea also, his organization. He has an amazing team of volunteers, and they're very, very professional people. And if you want to go visit any of these schools in Azad Kashmir, in Neelam Valley or Jhelum Valley or Lipa Valley, you just reach out to those organizations or like reach out to me, and I'll connect you and get involved as a volunteer and go spend time there. Don't just, go, and it's very safe. Go to Muzaffarabad. It's my cousin's son drove me last time, and he goes, like we're driving along when we're coming back from one of the villages, and we're driving back, and like, there's a place in Muzaffarabad where the Neelam River and the Jhelum River, they merge. And a lot of the houses, my proposed house used to be on hill. I think the house was destroyed or partially destroyed during the earthquake. They don't live there anymore. You could step out of their house, go to the side of the cliff. You could see the two rivers like merge, and like the
Wow.
yeah, and there's hotels there. Like, I met someone who's of Egyptian background, and he was working with some international developing banks, and he said that he's been to over 60 developing countries. And he said in Pakistan, I asked him, I was like, so what's your favorite place in Pakistan? He said Muzaffarabad, and I was shocked because it was, I thought he would say Lahore, or like, I was like, really? He said Muzaffarabad. And he said, if there's one place in this entire world, out of all the 60 plus countries that I've visited, if there's one place where I would like to actually be poor, it's the city of Muzaffarabad, because people are that kind in Muzaffarabad. But there's Azad Kashmir beyond Muzaffarabad.
Right.
Like, Muzaffarabad was rebuilt. There's this beautiful Prime Minister house, which, you can put money into that. You can also build schools in those villages.
Right.
So,
For sure.
yeah.
And finally, Mehreen, when you look back at your journey so far, what do you hope in terms of the work that you've left behind? What do you hope beyond? What's your legacy?
I don't know. It just again sounds so like fancy. I'm just like a person.
Let's rephrase it.
Yeah.
You came to the U.S. around when you were in middle school, I think, right?
Yeah.
And so you spent a good chunk of your life in in America as well. So your true definition of Pakistani American, because you came at both age. Now, we don't see a lot of Pakistani Americans, out there, in the nonprofit world. Sometimes we're at our organization, we're begging for help, just finding people, and sometimes we get burned out, because there's just always something to do. What do you think we can do to help build the Pakistani American community and get them to be more involved? Because, I want to say one thing. I've realized in this mid-conversation, we all met through Women to Women in one sort of way.
Yeah.
And community building has become a big part of my life, working with different organizations, and the connections you form, the friendships you form, they're so meaningful, and they go such a long way. But beyond that, what else would you say how do we pull that mindset in our Pakistani American?
Yeah, if we could, like, specifically to you, like, if you could do one thing beyond, like, we always like to say that it's not a change if it doesn't go on beyond me, right?
Yeah.
So what do you hope to accomplish? Like, we've already talked about, we're not going to delve into the nitty-gritty, but beyond what you're doing, what do you hope to accomplish? Like,
I think the realization that sometimes younger people, and when we were growing up, we also had these experiences. When you join an organization, you volunteer, sometimes you meet negative people, but you have to also see that there's also amazing people, right? So when you focus on those people who are dedicated, and most of the people who are most dedicated are working silently. So don't like become disgruntled just because of a few like bad experiences. And I'll give you my own example. When I did my first fundraiser, it was during COVID. I live alone, and I was going through like a very rough situation in my personal life. And it's COVID, you're not meeting people. There's only like so many WhatsApp calls you can be on with friends or cousins. There's only so much Netflix you can watch. I started this fundraiser. I'm like, I'm bored. I can do something meaningful, and this doesn't require me to go anywhere. It's just an online fundraiser. And people who donated, and to this day, every single person who donates toward these schools, it washes out some of the negativity that I was carrying from other people. And because it's you realize the goodness, you see the goodness in people. And you're talking to me as if I'm just an ordinary person, But the people who donate toward these school projects, they don't even ask for credit. These are our friends, our community members. Some people who are friends, and they're just like, yeah, I want to help, and they don't ask for credit. They don't ask for recognition, and always focus on those. Even if, let's say, there's 5 people and maybe 1 or 2 said hurtful things, there's 3 people who are very kind and who have, and I think that's what keeps me going, because every time I'm a negative thinker, and I'm gonna just say that my mind tends to be very negative. So I think it's been a therapeutic experience for me personally. Sure. The 5 schools for which I've been able to raise funds, I saw the goodness of people that are out there who don't seek credit. So yeah, I mean,
I'm gonna disagree with you.
Okay.
I think you're a very positive.
Oh really? Okay.
And I'll tell you why. Because it takes a big person to take tragedy or trauma or difficulties in life and choose to do something better rather than wallow in their misery.
Yeah.
I think that's actually a very positive thing that you did, that you said, okay, I don't want to focus on what's happening in my life right now that's giving me sadness.
Yeah.
I'm going to focus on something, I'm going to turn this sadness into something purposeful. And that, I think, is the definition of being a positive person, frankly speaking.
I mean, I wouldn't say it was therapy for me. It's been therapy for me. So
I love this,
But, I can share that sentiment, because my entry into nonprofit world was also in 2020 as well, when I was really alone, and, suddenly I couldn't go to the city to hang out with my friends anymore. And the person I became through community development, I think a lot of times we think about what we're helping, the cause is the most important part, but how much we grow out of it.
Yes.
I mean, we and I, when we first met back in 2022 and who we are today, I'm really proud of the growth we've made.
I agree.
And and to look back and you develop a confidence in yourself that you can do it. So, and going back to your point, at the end of the day, it's a lot of times when you going back to how it's faith related and how Allah always makes it happen.
Yeah.
A lot of times I also look at it as I was put in the right place in the right time. It could have been anyone to do all this work.
Yeah.
Even when joining Women to Women a few years ago, it just happened by chance. I'm not doing anything that no one else could do. I'm just in the right place in the right time.
Yeah.
And so
same thing. I'm not doing anything. If I can do this, anyone can do this.
But that's what people need to see.
Yeah.
And that's why we brought you. That's why we awarded you.
Yeah.
And that's why we brought you on.
Thank you.
Because we feel that people think that, there's those people who do it full time, and I fully commend them. But if we only give 25%, if we have 25% to give, and we only give 25%, and 4 people deliver together, that's going to go a long way.
So to your point, I agree that I think individuals such as yourself, that as you describe, I'm somebody who's ordinary. Well, I think that ordinary people are the ones that are going to do extraordinary things, frankly speaking. And honestly speaking, my take on you specifically and what you've done and all you've talked about, we live in the Western world with blessings beyond, so many. And to have that insight that there's parts of the world that need my help, and what can I do? And it doesn't take a so-called like a Mother Teresa or a saint to accomplish that. All it takes is one individual who wants to serve a purpose bigger than themselves. And that, I think, honestly, I mean, बहुत तारीफें हम कर रहे हैं तुम्हारी, मगर that's a fact.
Hey, we need to justify our award.
Yes, we certainly. I think you are truly not only deserving, but I hope and pray that we get more people like you in our world, because I think that's what it takes to make this world a better place, frankly speaking. So thank you so much for joining us for this live and giving us your insight, not only on the Kashmir situation, but also all the work you've done and bringing attention to what can still be done, the potential that exists there. We're going to include the details of the different fundraisers that you can contribute towards for the causes of schools and infrastructure building in Kashmir. And Danish?
Yeah, no, thank you so much, and I'm grateful to Women to One for introducing all 3 of us at one point in our lives, and may this bond continue.
Thank you guys for having me. Thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, audience, for joining us. And I will do the awkward thing where I have to shut this off now. Okay, thank you. All right. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Don't leave it.